Welcome back, Legion. Today I want to talk to you guys about the best way to warm up. So warm-ups are a significant part of a performance program. It's not just about increasing your body temperature anymore. Warm-ups are about physically preparing your body for optimal training so you can train in your absolute best. Therefore, you need to take it seriously. A lot of people don't appreciate what a warm-up can do and how it can improve your overall performance. The way we think about it is it's a great place to sneak in some extras. We can replicate some of the movement patterns we're doing in the gym, or even some of the movements that we might do on a sporting field, and we can do it in a way to get some extra reps in, because practice makes us better. So the more often we can do a skill or a movement, the better we're going to be at that skill or movement. And a warm-up is a great place to add in this extra little bit of training. So I think gone are the days of the old warm-up where people would just run a lap of the field or the court or the oval. They would jog a lap and then they come in, do a bit of stagger stretching, and then bang, off we go. We're into our first lot of drills. Or if you're a lifter, if you're a gym goer, just come in. All right, we got squats today. Grab an empty bar, straight into the squatting mat pattern. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we're low on time, and you need to make it nicely effective and efficient. But it doesn't mean that you still shouldn't warm up properly. And how you should feel after a good thorough warm up. You should feel primed and ready to go. So it should prepare you as best as possible for that training session so you can get even more out of the training session. At the same time, it shouldn't go for 30 plus minutes. That's too long. Your warm-up shouldn't be longer than your actual training session, put it that way. We can get really effective warm-ups done in 10 to 15 minutes. And you can even get them done in 5 minutes if you're really short on time. But ideally, you don't want to rush it and you want to prepare yourself as best as possible. Now, when you're developing your warm-up, it's important to have specificity in mind. So you want to make your warm-up as specific to the training session you're just about to complete as possible. So for example, if you're a field-based athlete, and you have to run, jump, sprint, throw, accelerate, change direction, then you want to make sure you have these elements in your warm-up. The other option here is if you're more of a lifter and you're doing, say, like a squat session, then you want to make sure your warm-up is tailored around getting prepared to squat heavy in that session. For both athletes, we're just making sure that whatever we're doing in our warm-up is going to prepare you for your absolute best session for right then and there. So how to structure a warm-up. I'm going to run you through a simple template that we use here at Luda Sports Performance. It can obviously be adjusted, but it's working pretty well for us at the moment. So the first thing is to foam roll. Now, foam rolling, this is not going too hard, so this isn't necessarily trying to make permanent specific changes, but what we're looking at here is just to reduce some of the tone in some tight muscles. Now, depending on what you do for work, you know, your back might get really tight, your hips might get really tight. If you're sitting lots, we just need to make sure we're going to unglue ourselves a little bit so we can get into the proper positions and range of motions that we need for our training. So for example, if we're going to do lots of running and sprinting, we need to make sure that we can get into hip extension and our hips are nice and loose and allows us to do that. Best way to go about this is a ground up approach. Start at your feet, work up to the calves, hamstrings, roll over, quads, groins, flick onto the glutes, then into your upper back. If you're really tight in your upper body as well, you can also hit the chest and the lats. Ideally, really only spending 30 seconds per limb, per body part. We don't really want to spend any more than probably 3 minutes doing some foam rolling. The next is mobility. And before we jump into this, you probably need to understand the difference between mobility and flexibility. So mobility is your ability to get into a position, for example, sitting down deep into a squat, whereas flexibility is more the length or range at which your a specific joint can go. So this would be, like your straight leg raise, how high can you lift your leg up? Both are really important. Prior to training, you can do a mixture of both for sure. If you've got some really tight areas, then you will need to do some flexibility specific training. Otherwise, just general mobility training, so working through ranges of motion and movements that can reflect the movements that you're going to do throughout your training session. So this might include things like, say, the ankle, for example. If you've got a more tight ankle or ankle joint, then you can do things like a calf stretch might help with that. You might do a banded distraction, where a band is around the ankle joint and you're going to move forward and back, knee to wall kind of style. That's probably a specific joint kind of mobility, so if you're really restricted in one area, you might do that. Otherwise, you might do more global movement, such as yoga positions, which are really good because they tie in kind of like the whole body in one or two movements. You've heard of downward dog, which is actually not just for the hamstrings. It can really tie in the upper back, the hamstrings, and the calf, so that whole kind of back chain. So that's a good example of it. Really, we're just looking for 2 to 3 exercises here. Ideally focusing on the areas that you are most tight. If you are really loose and flexible in an area, there's probably no reason to do extra mobility on it. Then we would move into activation. Now, the way we think about activation is we're just trying to switch on and turn up the muscles that we want to use throughout our session. So our best example really is glute activation. And then even when we talk about glute activation, we obviously have the big one at the back, the glute max, but realistically we're also talking about the smaller, deeper musculature that not everyone knows about. And to be honest, you don't need to know a whole lot about the anatomy there, but there are smaller, more stabilizing muscles that keep the joint really stable when we're doing our different movement patterns. And these can go a long way from an injury prevention point of view as well. And we typically undertrain this. So instead of just adding it into your training program and lengthening out your session, we just whack it in the warm-up. Now it's doing a 2-for-1. We're getting some injury prevention training and we're warming up at the same time. So it's a massive positive here. Great example of these would be like your glute bridges, so single leg glute bridges. It's a great way to pattern hip extension using your glute, being more glute dominant, which ideally we want to carry over to running postures, but even squatting and deadlifting postures. And then we've got things like your banded walks. So using the mini stretch bands, we can put it around the knees, the ankles, or the feet. We can do lateral walking. We can do all types of different kind of glute activations, either lying, sitting, or standing, to warm up the hip musculature ready to go. So when we want to fire off, we've got that stability there. You can also do the same thing up the chain for the shoulder. Basically, the shoulder and hip are very similar joints and have similar structures. So the shoulder's kind of stabilizing muscles, your rotator cuff muscles. So it's important to kind of activate those as well. Posterior delt and the rotator cuff musculature to keep the shoulder stable. Same kind of thing here. We can use banded pull aparts, face pulls, and different mini band exercises, cable internal and external rotations as well. Another area you can activate, but is not always necessary for everyone, is your core and your midline. It's actually a great way to tie everything in, and it can be a good way just to kind of full body activate, working on kind of the principle of irradiation. So because your core is in the center, that would radiate to the limbs as well, so it can help stabilize the hips and the shoulders while warming up that midsection. So things like planks and dead bugs and bird dogs and side planks are all great options here. You don't need to thrash your core, but just working on those positions and exercises just to warm up and get things going. Then we can work into the money stuff, so more of a dynamic warm up. And this is where we can actually add in some technical stuff as well. So if we want to improve some of our running mechanics, We can throw in different types of running drills and different times of dynamic range of motion exercises where it's not just a static hold, you're actually going through full ranges. So for example, we've got like leg kicks and ground scoops and walking lunges, walking single leg deadlifts, your different kind of running technique stuff, A skip, B skip, ankling, heel ups, butt kicks, all this kind of stuff. This is when you can put this stuff in. Now we're really starting to get the heart rate up and get properly warm, but we're also drilling the body to want to hit those positions and those patterns more frequently, which will then translate to your running on field. You can obviously do the same thing here with squats, deadlifts, bench press, any of your lifting movements. You might just choose a piece of an exercise to warm up, or even just an empty bar, and that can be your dynamic variation of that warm up. Now from there, you can pretty much just go straight into your workout, into your first exercise, but you can also throw in some primers. So primers are things that really rev up the central nervous system and get your brain stimulated and ready for fast, explosive movements in the gym or on the field. So these can be things like jumping, throwing, and sprinting, and change of direction drilling. So you can do like full-on throwing and jumping and sprinting in the back end of your warm-up. It's a great time to do it because you are warm, you're very protected, everything's ready to go, and now you're fresh to have a red hot crack at those explosive dynamic movements. So it's a great thing to then do them, and then they'll carry really well into the rest of your training session as well. Okay guys, that's a kind of simplified structure of a warm-up. You can obviously break it down a little bit further, but this is a great way to start. And like I said previously, we just want to keep them around 10 to 15 minutes in length, but you can also shorten it to 5 minutes. There was kind of 5 things there, and you can just do one exercise for each. And that's a great way to at least start your workout. So even if you're short on time, it's still a good idea to get some kind of warm-up in, because this will accumulate over time. These reps that you think are insignificant can actually build up over time, especially if you're warming up, before every single training session. These reps will come back, and they'll pay dividends in the long run. All right, thanks for that, guys.